I'm 30, just an ordinary guy living an ordinary life. I am employed in the construction industry, dedicating extensive hours to the tasks at hand on the job site. When I'm not engaged in heavy lifting or crafting something with precision, I'm exploring various side projects. I'm just looking for a little extra income, you know? I'm currently single and don't have a partner, and to be frank, I've never found the time for anything too serious. I consistently prioritize my tasks. That's everything I understand. I'm not voicing any grievances, yet there are moments when solitude creeps in. I tend to steer clear of any kind of drama. What about my neighbors? I maintain a laid-back vibe. I don't spend much time with them, aside from the rare nod in the hallway or brief pleasantries when our paths cross. And then we have Lola. She resides right next to my home. Lola is 48, a widow, and to be frank, we've largely remained unfamiliar with one another. Simply friendly greetings when we cross paths. Ever since her husband passed away a couple of years ago, she has been living on her own. With her children away pursuing their studies in Europe, she finds herself spending the majority of her time alone. She always struck me as intriguing in her own unique manner, yet our conversations were quite limited. So, one day, I'm trudging back to my apartment after a long day at work, completely exhausted, when I spot Lola outside. She sits on the steps, gazing at the street as if she's adrift in her own reflections. The evening is serene and still. The sun is nearing the horizon, casting a warm glow as it prepares to dip below the edge of the world. Normally, I wouldn't take a moment to converse with her, but today feels different, somehow. There was an unmistakable shift in the air. I approach her, greet her, and she glances up at me, a subtle smile gracing her lips. We begin with the typical chatter about the weather and work, engaging in the familiar dance of small talk, but then, unexpectedly, I interject with a remark. Perhaps fatigue clouded my judgment, but I didn't give it a second thought. I have no issues with dating someone who is older than me. I jest, a blend of laughter and earnestness in my tone. It seems like they have everything sorted, doesn't it? Keep it simple. I can't quite grasp the reason behind my words. It has just been released. Yet, as soon as the words escaped my lips, I immediately sensed an unusual change in the atmosphere. Lola's eyes grew wider, and she leaned in just a bit. She remained silent. She didn't dismiss it as I expected her to. She cast me a glance that spoke volumes when I struggled to decipher the meaning. Truly, she remarked, her tone gentle, nearly playful. Indeed, one can never be certain, can they? What you discover may astonish you. I let out a soft laugh, attempting to retract my words, but the moment had already passed. The harm had been inflicted, or so I believed. I simply shrugged. No, I'm just having a bit of fun. You're familiar with the experience. Yet, within her gaze, there lingered a certain spark of curiosity. A surprising curiosity emerges from someone who has been your neighbor for years, yet your paths have never truly intersected in such a manner. After a brief exchange that lingered for a few more moments, I made my way indoors. I thought, it is what it is. It was merely a foolish jest. There's simply nothing else to say. Yet there was something in her gaze that suggested I might have revealed more than I had meant to. As the days unfolded, it slipped from my mind. I returned to my regular rhythm. Tasks, additional projects, rest. The typical scenario, really. However, she began to behave somewhat differently, and I found myself questioning whether that joke would eventually come back to haunt me. And that's when it dawned on me. I was completely unaware of the words that had just flowed from me in that moment. Yet at this moment, I remained in the dark. A few days following that discussion with Lola, there was an unmistakable sense of unease in the air. A lingering sensation told me that a shift had occurred in our connection. There was something elusive about it, a subtle shift in her smile whenever our paths crossed, as if we shared a silent connection that transcended words. It felt strange, and to be honest, I was at a loss for how to deal with it. Initially, I wondered if I was perhaps overanalyzing the situation. I suppose I thought that being a widow implied she wouldn't be open to anything of that nature. Yet, the way she gazed at me after I cracked that joke held a certain depth, an elusive quality that I couldn't fully grasp. I reassured myself that it was trivial, merely a product of my own overthinking. I adhered to my established routine. Rise, head to the office, return home, perhaps enjoy a swift meal, and then drift off to sleep. I didn't hesitate for a moment. One evening, as I strolled back from the corner store, I spotted Lola waiting outside my door. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, gazing up at the stars as if she were deep in contemplation. As I approached down the hallway, she stood a little taller and offered me that familiar smile once again. Yet, on this occasion, it felt distinct. It was more than a mere smile. It felt as though she was poised, anticipating an event yet to unfold. My heart raced with excitement. I was certain that I hadn't conjured up the events from the other day. "Hey, bread," she remarked, her tone relaxed yet laced with an undercurrent of deeper meaning. "Do you have a moment to spare?" I hesitated for a moment, contemplating an excuse, but then I thought, why not go for it? I found myself present, and it wasn't as though I had any urgent matters demanding my attention. "Of course," I replied, moving closer to her. "Hello there." She paused, casting a quick look down the hallway as if to confirm that no one else was nearby. Then she glanced back at me, and her gaze appeared to warm. "Text, I realize this might come as a surprise," she began, her voice a touch softer than normal, "but I was curious if you'd be interested in coming over for a drink sometime. As a neighbor, it's all perfectly normal. I've been wanting to inquire, and I think now is the perfect moment to do so." I paused for a moment, grappling with the right words to express my thoughts. On one side, I understood the essence of this matter. She was interpreting my joke with utmost seriousness. Yet, it seemed as though she was merely probing, gauging whether I would bite the hook. Thoughts surged through my mind, leaving me with an undeniable sense of discomfort. I certainly found her attractive. Lola possessed a unique charm that set her apart. There was a subtle assurance in her demeanor, a clear indication that she was a woman shaped by her experiences. However, I found myself not wanting to engage with her. It seemed overly intricate, excessively chaotic. I parted my lips to speak, yet initially, no words emerged. I clear my throat. "Of course. Absolutely, that sounds good." I finally spoke, making an effort to maintain a casual and carefree tone. Lola smiled, and for a brief moment, I could have sworn I caught a glimpse of relief in her eyes. She nodded, a gentle laugh escaping her lips. "Excellent. What do you think about tomorrow evening? I'll have you inquire about something straightforward." After a brief moment of uncertainty, I finally gave a nod. "Tomorrow seems promising." Upon entering my apartment, I found myself revisiting the entire conversation in my mind. What on earth was I thinking? This caught me completely off guard, beyond anything I could have imagined. Lola, my neighbor, a woman I hardly knew. I was just on the verge of heading over to her place for a drink. Was this an amicable invitation, or was there an ulterior motive lurking beneath the surface? The doubt ate away at my thoughts. I found myself uncertain about my desires, yet equally perplexed about how to withdraw from the situation at this point. It was merely a drink, wasn't it? I could maintain a laid-back approach and simply step back if it became uncomfortable. Yet, as that thought crossed my mind, I sensed beneath the surface that the casual nature of things wouldn't last much longer. The following evening, I arrived at her doorstep, filled with uncertainty about what lay ahead. She welcomed me with a warm smile, adorned in an outfit that was both understated and graceful. Not overly extravagant, yet just enough to give her a unique appearance. I found myself uncertain about the emotions it stirred within me. I attempted to dismiss it, yet a nagging feeling in the depths of my stomach warned me that I was unready for whatever lay ahead. Lola ushered me in, and the dialogue flowed effortlessly from the beginning. Casual conversation. Labor. The atmospheric conditions. The typical scenario, really. Yet, as the minutes ticked by, the tension between us grew palpable. Each time she chuckled at my words, I observed her gaze lingering just a bit longer than normal. how she inched a little nearer than required. Despite my efforts to reassure myself that it was merely two neighbors sharing a drink, an unsettling feeling lingered, suggesting that I wouldn't emerge from this unscathed. The evening began with a sense of calm and simplicity. Lola and I shared a drink together. A fine glass of wine. Nothing overly elaborate. We found ourselves in her cozy living room. A solitary lamp illuminates the area with a gentle radiance. Though it wasn't large, it exuded a warm and inviting charm. Uncomplicated. She exuded a cozy, welcoming energy. It was evident that she had crafted this environment for her own, and it resonated with intimacy. Framed photos adorned the walls, capturing moments of her and her late husband, along with snapshots of her children from their younger days. The space exuded a warm, inviting atmosphere that felt familiar and cozy. Initially, the dialogue revolved around the commonplace topics. She inquired about my work, and I shared details about the latest project I was involved in. Nothing particularly thrilling. I inquired about her children and their experiences in Europe. Her smile radiated as she spoke of them, infused with a deep sense of pride. As the evening progressed, the dialogue took a different turn. I wasn't attempting to guide it toward any specific outcome, yet it unfolded that way on its own. She sat opposite me, legs elegantly crossed, her glass of wine poised on the coffee table that separated us. She exuded a sense of ease in her posture. Yet her eyes, those captivating eyes, appeared sharper than ever, as if they were truly seeing me. A subtle tension lingered in the air, an unsettling presence that stirred my discomfort. "You know," she said, breaking the silence between us, "Bread. I won't feign ignorance when someone catches my eye with their attractiveness. You possess quite an appealing appearance." She hesitated, seemingly anticipating my response. I let out a nervous laugh, attempting to maintain a cheerful atmosphere. "Thank you, I suppose. You're quite impressive in your own right," I declared, lifting my glass in her direction. But then she leaned forward a bit, her voice becoming gentler. "It goes beyond mere appearances. It's all about the intricate bonds, the way individuals intertwine." A knot formed in my stomach. The atmosphere around us felt different, as if a chill had suddenly settled in. I was uncertain whether to interject or simply allow her to continue speaking. The wine had affected me more than I anticipated, and I became acutely aware of the proximity between us. I adjusted in my chair, seeking a more comfortable stance, yet the sensation lingered that this was evolving into something deeper. "I'm not quite sure what you mean," I replied, attempting to keep my tone light, though I could sense the faint quiver in my voice. Lola smiled, and there was something unique about it this time. It wasn't a warm smile, but rather a knowing one, as if she could see right through me. "You don't have to say anything," she said, her voice now a whisper. "I'm not requesting anything. I want you to know that I'm available if you ever feel like chatting. Or perhaps even more." I stood still. Thoughts surged through my mind. Did she truly just utter that? Further, was she really flirting with me? My instinct urged me to retreat, to distance myself, yet there lingered a subtle curiosity that I couldn't ignore. She possessed an undeniable allure, an unexpected charm that drew me in, yet the situation was far from simple. She lived next door, a few years my senior, and I found myself utterly lost in how to approach this situation. Moreover, we must acknowledge that she faced the challenges of widowhood, grappling with her own complex emotions. I didn't want to be the person who exploited that opportunity. I managed a smile, yet it seemed forced. "Lola," I began, but she lifted her hand, halting me mid-sentence. "There's no need for explanations, Bread," she said, her voice unwavering and composed. "I have no expectations from you. I simply wanted to share this thought." I lingered in quiet contemplation for an extended moment, attempting to make sense of the events that had just unfolded. It wasn't as if she was asking for much, yet the manner in which she expressed herself, the intensity of her gaze, left me feeling disoriented, as though I had stepped into unfamiliar ground. "Well," I said, clearing my throat, attempting to navigate the discomfort, "I'm pleased you're being honest about it. Lola smiled once more, her gaze becoming gentle. I'm not seeking anything intense, just a companion to share thoughts with, someone who offers understanding. I believe you understand that. I nodded, feeling a sense of uncertainty about how to proceed with the conversation. The atmosphere was thick with tension, an unvoiced connection lingering between us. Despite my reluctance to acknowledge it, I came to understand that my attraction to her ran deeper than I had intended. Perhaps it was her unwavering confidence and sense of security, or perhaps it was the raw vulnerability reflected in her eyes. Yet, regardless of the circumstances, I found it impossible to resist the allure. She drained her glass of wine and rose to her feet, making her way to the window. You should probably get going, she said, her voice gentle yet resolute. I want you to feel at ease. I rose to my feet, somewhat disoriented. Indeed, it seems like it's time for me to take my leave. I approached the door, and just as my hand grasped the handle, Lola glanced back at me. Bread, she remarked, her tone earnest yet soft. There's no need to rush into any decisions at this moment. I wanted to let you know that I'm available if you require assistance. I nodded, struggling to articulate my thoughts. Thank you, Lola. I exited her apartment and strolled down the hallway, my thoughts swirling. What just transpired? I believed I was merely heading out for a laid-back drink, yet now the situation had become intricate. I found myself uncertain about my desires. I was torn between the urge to distance myself and the temptation to surrender to the growing connection between us. Yet, one truth remained clear, everything was destined to change forever. The following days felt as if I were treading carefully, mindful of every step I took. Each encounter with Lola carried a subtle tension, an unspoken understanding that something had changed between us, yet we both hesitated to confront it openly. Initially, it felt completely natural. It resembled the unspoken truth we both recognized, yet neither of us had the courage to address. I made an effort to maintain a sense of normalcy. I would greet her in the hallway, perhaps share a few words, but then everything seemed to change. She maintained her friendly demeanor, as if everything remained the same, yet there was a shift in the way her gaze met mine now. It was understated, yet undeniably present. Her gaze held for a moment more, and when she finally spoke, her voice was gentle, carrying a sense of closeness. I would remind myself that I was getting lost in my thoughts, that I ought to let go of that evening. Yet, each time I encountered her, the intensity of my emotions was undeniable. The allure remained, yet so did the discomfort. I was uncertain about my desires, unclear about hers, and utterly lost in this strange territory we found ourselves in. Then arrived the moment I could no longer escape it. As I made my way home from work, my hands were occupied with a toolbox and a bag of takeout. After a lengthy day, all I desired was to collapse into bed. As I approached the front door of my building, I spotted her, Lola, standing outside, seemingly anticipating my arrival. I stood still for a brief instant. Running into her was completely unexpected. Not at this moment, not in this manner. Yet, there she stood, beaming, as if all was utterly ordinary. Hey, Bread, she remarked, her tone airy, bordering on nonchalant. I was on the verge of stepping out. Would you like to join me for a coffee? There was a moment of uncertainty. The invitation appeared harmless at first glance, yet her casual tone, as if we were merely acquaintances, stirred a sense of discomfort within me. Of course, I replied, attempting to maintain an air of casualness. Allow me to simply deliver this material. I opened the door to my apartment and swiftly placed the toolbox on the counter, attempting to dispel the sense that I was stepping into a situation for which I was unready. Upon my return, she remained there, patiently awaiting. We strolled to a nearby cafe, and as we settled in with our drinks, the conversation flowed, mostly in a typical manner. She inquired about my work, and I reciprocated by asking about her weekend plans. However, it wasn't long before that same tension re-emerged. Bread, she remarked, her tone taking on a more earnest note. I've been reflecting deeply on our conversation from the other evening. My heart raced in an unexpected moment. I sensed the direction this was taking, and uncertainty lingered about my preparedness for it. Lola, I began, but she interrupted me. I'm not asking you to make any decisions, she said, raising her hand. I find it hard to articulate, but there's an undeniable feeling I experience when you're near. It's been ages since I've experienced this feeling. I simply wished to convey that to you. I gazed at her, attempting to comprehend her words. Her honesty was striking, her vulnerability laid bare, and I found myself at a loss for words. My instinct urged me to offer some comforting words, to assure her that I wouldn't abandon her, yet the reality was that fear gripped me. I hesitated, my voice barely above a whisper, uncertain whether I was referring to the bond we shared or something deeper. Lola, you're my neighbor, and I don't. I prefer to keep things straightforward. She smiled, yet a hint of sorrow lingered in her eyes. I understand, Brad. I truly do. I felt it was important to express this truthfully to you. I don't mean to put any pressure on you. I appreciated that, her candor, yet it still lingered within me, an unsettling sensation I couldn't quite dispel. I was completely at a loss with all of this. I found myself in a difficult position. I had no intention of causing her pain, yet I also couldn't bear the thought of giving her false hope. The more I reflected on this situation, the clearer it became that I was the one grappling with uncertainty about my own desires. The dialogue shifted to more comfortable subjects, yet the atmosphere remained heavy with things left unsaid. As we concluded our coffee, I rose, caught in a swirl of emotions, uncertain whether relief or disappointment was my true companion. I ought to be on my way, I remarked, making an effort to maintain a cheerful tone. Absolutely, I feel the same way, she remarked, standing beside me. I'm available if you'd like to chat, Brad. Whenever you need. With a silent agreement, we made our way back to the building, our footsteps echoing in the quiet. Upon arriving at our doors, Lola paused and turned to look at me. Please take a moment to consider it, all right? She spoke softly. I felt uncertain about what thoughts were expected of me, yet I nodded regardless, attempting to muster a smile. Sure, I'll consider it. She offered a brief smile before pivoting and stepping into her apartment. I lingered for a moment, my heart racing within my chest. What on earth am I meant to do now? Her words echoed in my mind, a constant presence that I couldn't shake off. Yet, I found myself at a loss, unsure of how to navigate the tangled emotions that stirred within me. I was uncertain whether to distance myself from her or if I was overreacting to the situation. All I understood was that I had found myself in a situation far more complex than I had ever planned for. A few days had passed since my coffee with Lola, and truthfully, it lingered in my mind incessantly. I found myself revisiting her words, her openness, the way her gaze met mine. I assured myself that I had communicated my boundaries regarding a purely platonic connection, yet an unsettling feeling lingered within me. Each time I encountered her, it was as if I were deceiving my own heart. The following evening, I stood outside my apartment, gazing at her door. My heart pounded in my chest, and my palms glistened with sweat. I was reluctant to continue evading this matter. I sought resolution, not solely for her sake, but for my own peace of mind. I needed to understand my desires and the consequences of avoiding the truth. I tapped softly, then paused, the echo of my fingers on the surface resonating oddly in the stillness. Moments later, the door swung open, revealing her presence. Lola. Her eyes held a gentle warmth, filled with anticipation, yet there was a subtle trace of uncertainty in her expression. She had no idea what I was about to express either. Hello. I uttered, mustering a smile. May we have a conversation? Certainly, she replied, moving aside to allow me entry. Step right in. I stepped into her apartment, and for the first time, I felt more than just a neighbor. I wasn't merely the person who made light of dating older women. I found myself in a position where a decision had to be made. She gestured for me to take a seat on the couch, and we settled in, maintaining a bit more space between us than we had earlier. The atmosphere thickened with the unspoken tension that had developed between us. Absolutely no humor. Focus solely on the task at hand. Only the two of us, together with this silent tension lingering around us. Lola. I began, my voice slightly trembling. Your words have been on my mind since our last discussion, and I believe it's time for us to engage in a meaningful conversation about this matter. She nodded, her expression inscrutable. I've been pondering it as well, Brad. I inhaled deeply, attempting to calm my racing thoughts. I have no intention of causing you any pain. Your kindness towards me has been appreciated. You have consistently been a presence in my life. I really don't want to create any tension between us, you understand? Initially, she remained silent. Simply remained there, observing me with those calm, empathetic eyes. At last, she found her voice. I understand that you're not seeking anything too serious, she remarked. And that's perfectly fine. I understand. A burden seemed to evaporate from my chest, yet it wasn't a sense of relief. A sense of closure enveloped the moment. This was not destined to evolve into anything greater. And in some way, that resonated perfectly. I confessed, I'm not sure what I want, Lola. However, I am aware that I prefer not to prolong this. I wish to ensure fairness towards you. As neighbors, I value our relationship and want to ensure it remains positive. Her smile was gentle, yet it held a quality I had never encountered before. It lacked any sense of playfulness or flirtation. It carried a sense of sorrow, perhaps tinged with acceptance. Your candor is truly valued, Brad. I truly do. I aim to keep things simple, too. And I believe it's for the best that we refrain from crossing that boundary. I acknowledged, my heart weighed down. It wasn't my initial desire, yet it seemed like the appropriate decision. A lengthy silence hung in the air, leaving me uncertain about my next words. I hoped to depart on a more positive note. Yet, what more could possibly be expressed? We were both aware of the current situation. Clear and straightforward. Cease the speculation. I'll honor that, I concluded at last. And I truly wish we can remain neighbors, you know? There's no awkwardness between us. Certainly, she responded, her tone unwavering. Everything will be all right. I rose to my feet, prepared to depart. I found myself uncertain about the emotions I might experience. Feeling a mix of relief, sorrow, and uncertainty. Yet, all I understood was that it had come to an end. We would always remain just neighbors. And that was perfectly fine. Just as I was about to walk away, Lola reached out, her hand resting softly on my arm. Brad, she murmured softly. I appreciate your honesty. That was exactly what I required. I cast a final glance at her before leaving her apartment. I shut the door softly and paused for a moment, resting against it while inhaling deeply. The task was completed. The end had come. Even if it wasn't the result I had envisioned, it seemed to resonate as the appropriate choice. I made my way home, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Perhaps a fragment of my being would eternally ponder the possibilities of what could have unfolded. Yet, a different part of me understood that we would both be fine. Life would continue, and so would we. As I approached my door and turned the handle, a singular truth settled in my mind. At times, the most challenging decisions lead to the greatest sense of tranquility.